was saying, after Benny Carter, continue on, after Benny Carter played this Body and Soul for me by request, I went on back to work over to Regal, and he came over, and we were talking over Club Regal, and I was complimenting him on the way he played and everything. I told him that I was satisfied, and I didn't want to hear nobody else play Body and Soul after I heard him. So he said, "Oh man," I said, that was nothing to that. There's a boy in New York now that I think he is the greatest saxophone player I've ever heard. That's Benny Carter saying that about this musician. So I asked him, I said, "Well, who was it?" He says, "It's a boy named, a young man named Charlie Parker. He's a great alto saxophonist. He's different. He's got a different style from anybody, and he plays more horn. He's fast, and he's just a marvelous. He's got a mind that's so fast, you just can't hardly keep up with him." So he went on to say he came to New York, and he'd been playing with a band out of Kansas City, Jay McSann. I said, "Jay McSann," I said, "Now, tell me, what, you know," I said, "I remember Jay McSann had been in Columbus, and he was sort of, what we used to call when the band would be laying off and would be playing, they had planned to be playing, but they were, something happened, the job was canceled or something like this, so he wasn't playing a few nights." So I said, "Well, Benny Carter, I tell you, Mr. Carter," I said, "I remember Jay McSann coming to Columbus, and he had some off nights, and during that time he had these off nights, a fellow came up there to the Regal, and I believe that must have been who you're talking about. His name was, he was playing with Jay McSann, and he was Charlie Parker." He said, "Yeah, that's the guy," and I described his appearance and everything. He said, "That's the guy," but I never got the chance to hear him. So here, later on, a few years later, after that conversation with Benny Carter, I was in New York with Lucky Milner's band. So on my off nights, I would go down on 52nd Street to hear some of these different musicians. And you know, funny thing about it, I thought about it, the fact that I had a chance to hear Charlie Parker, but I passed it up because I was working and playing at the Apollo Theater and all that. You know, 7 nights, 7 days a week, and I'm playing 4 and 5 and 6 shows a day. So I was too tired to be going out too much. So I did pass him up. I could have heard Charlie Parker play down on 52nd Street, somewhere down in New York, where they have all them jazz combos and all the musicians like Roy Elvis and Dizzy Gillespie, and so anyhow. I didn't hear him, but after I started buying his records and hearing him, I said, "My God, this man is phenomenal." I said, "There's no question about it. He is the greatest saxophone player, alto saxophone player that I've ever heard." I agreed with Benny Carter that he was absolutely the greatest. And so, but the thing about being a jazz musician, as I say, call him in the category you put him in, a jazz musician lives such a hard life, and he sort of dissipates so much, and he mistreats himself and physically and mentally, that the first thing you know, he's just a total wreck. And that's what happened to Charlie Parker. He died when he was only about 35, 36 years old, using too many drugs and not taking care of himself. So anyhow, it was said that at the time of his death, that the coroner said that he was a man of appeared to be about 55 or 60 years of age. Yet he was only 35 or 36 years old. That just shows you how fast life a musician lives. So that's one of the reasons why I got out of that type of life and came home to be with my family and be sort of just an ordinary musician around town and working jobs and then getting a job in the daytime, which I did. And I enjoyed that type of living style, and it's full all my life, and it was good for my family, and it helped me all the way through. But there was an awful lot of things that I could tell you about it. There's plenty, and some of the things that happened in my life. I remember that one time I was working in the Apollo Theater, and we played, after the first show, the guys were running with their horns, the saxophone players, and I said, "Where you guys going? Got your horns, and what's happening?" And I didn't have mine. I was just getting ready to go out of the theater for maybe an hour or two, you know, little break period. So They said, we got to go to rehearsal. I said, rehearsal? I said, nobody told me to come to rehearsal. They said, well, that's what we're doing. We're going upstairs. And then they went up to about almost to the top floor. I said, I better go up there and see what's going on. So I began to think, maybe these guys, somebody, maybe left to get ready to replace me. So I got up there, sure enough, he had 3 alto players trying out for the band. He's going to take my place. I said, what? He said, and they didn't say nothing to me, didn't tell me no explanation. But as I said before, I never asked a whole lot of questions. I just be an observer and see it, make up my own mind, and then didn't ask too many questions because you get along better that way. But I did notice the fact that each time they tried out and played, they would say, well, the next guy, let him, come on, you go ahead and do this. You know, then he's called, what Joe or whatever his name is. You got it now. And so they would place him in the section and let him try out and play my parts. And they did that for all 3 saxophone players that was trying out. And I even loaned one of the guys a clarinet because, like I said, Lucky had a repertoire which required all the saxophone players to play clarinet, double on clarinet, because he had a style of reed section played sound similar to Glenn Miller style, like where they use clarinets and double on alto or double on saxophone and clarinet, and it had that beautiful sort of organ-like sound in the background and the section. It was beautiful. So anyhow, one of the guys didn't have a clarinet. I said, well, wait, I'll let you use mine. So he took my clarinet and played. But it ended up, I was able to keep my job because the guys told him, said, Lucky, said, you can't get rid of Sam. Said, Sammy's his tone blends and he fits in the reed section better than any of these 3 guys. Now I'm not going to call any names about who these guys were, but they were rated pretty high because they had played with Benny Carter, they had played with Cab, they had played with Fletcher Henderson. These 3 guys that was trying out for my job. They played with Cootie Williams. And anyhow, they ended up, I still had my job, so I went on with Lucky's band. And when we got down south, on this, we would leave New York to go down on a southern tour, which would end up, we would be in California on the end of the tour. Then we were going to come back to New York. So I went on with the band, and when we got down, and someplace down in down in Alabama or somewhere, where meantime, I meant to put this little note in there that one of the guys that just joined the band, Lucky's band, the trumpet player, and he was Billie Holiday's husband, and he was quite a great jazz musician and improviser. He could play a lot of jazz. So his name was Joe Guy. Joe Guy was in the band. So I remember Joe Guy being in the band for maybe about a month or 2, and he quit. But he was kind of a fellow that pretty hard to get along with when it come down to being happy in his lifestyle. And he liked to indulge a lot with drugs and all that type of thing. And I think he didn't live too long. He's dead, been dead. A lot of musicians back in them days, they used all kind of drugs. Just about everything was that you could get a hold of, and it was very bad and injurious to their health. And so they died quickly. I mean, died in their early 40s or 30s or 50s, whatever, you know. They didn't live long. So I didn't bother with any of that stuff. I think one time, I'll have to admit this, I don't know what might get me in trouble, but I shouldn't be telling this, but I did, I was back home in Columbus and went to a jam session and we were playing, and so the guy said, on the intermission, he said, come on, let's go outside, we're going to light up. I said, what? Going to light up? Oh, you got a stick? Yeah. I said, come on. So I went with him and we lit up a stick of reefer, you know, and we called it pot. We lit up this pot and everybody took two, 3 draws and passed it around, kept on passing around until finally it got down to where it was just about the end of it. And he said, here, Sam, you finish it up. So I took me a couple draws off it, and then I threw it away because it was on down to where it was burning my fingers to hold it. And I got back in the club where I picked up a horn, started blowing jam again. My head began to have a funny sensation. I began to get real high because I had been drinking whiskey, beer, wine, rum, scotch. I've been drinking everything because people were sending up drinks to the band, and they just had drinks, glasses all over the piano. And where we had been, people been buying us drinks, so I was drinking it stuff because I was young, and I was in my early 20s. So I got real high. I got so high, I got afraid to continue on, so I packed up my horn. I said, I got to get out of here. So the guy said, where are you going? I said, I'm going home, man. I said, I can't be here any longer. I can't feel like playing no longer. So I packed up my instrument and left on out. And the next day, I was still high. And one of my friends lived in the house, room in the house where I was staying. He said, Sammy, I'll tell you what you do. You go ahead and go on to bed. That was that night that I got high when I used this reefer. And he said, I want to get you some candy and a bottle of milk. So he went out, got a bottle of milk and some candy. Got me 2 Baby Ruth bars or something. Said, now eat this candy and drink this milk. So I did that. And I began to feel better, but I felt like I was in a spaceship, traveling about 200,000 or 300,000 miles a minute. I was the fastest ride I ever had in my life, and imagination, you know. So anyhow, next day I got up and got dressed, and I walked out in the street, and I thought everybody was looking at me. It frightened me, and I said I was very aware of the fact that I had done something that I would never want to do again. So I made it up my mind. I said I'll never ever try to smoke a reefer anymore. That was the last time, and I never did after that. That's the only time I ever tried it, and it learned me a lesson. And so, but the other guys would keep on doing that kind of stuff, and the first thing you know, you'd be reading about them when they passed away. But I had been through all them kind of experiences. You know, the different musicians and guys like to have a lot of fun with life, and they fool around. I remember another time when we were in Cleveland. The band, Chick Carter's band, and Dick the Rhythm Boys band, and the band in which I said the trumpet player named Snooky Young, who was later in life, he was with the Johnny Carson's band, Doc Severs' orchestra. He was in Cleveland playing with us, and we were playing at a club in Cleveland. I can't think of the name of that club, but we were there for a whole week or 2 weeks, and we played there. And one of the guys in the band, he was a tremendous trombonist. He played the great jazz solos, and his name was Joe Davis. And I had written quite a few arrangements for that band, and one of the arrangements I had written was arrangement on Honeysuckle Rose. And we featured him because I wrote it and copied and had phrases and passages in the arrangement taken from Duke Ellington's Ebony Rhapsody. It was almost in different places, almost identical where I copied it. And so that's one reason how I got in this band with Esther Watterson and Eddie Marley, because of my arrangement. I had written a lot of good arrangements for different bands that I played with. So anyhow, this boy was a tremendous trombone player. And so one night we were playing, I remember the name of the club now was Cedar Gardens. Cedar Gardens in Cleveland. And we were there for about 2 or 3 weeks. And so we were there for, at the time when we went out of money, we would sign a tab, we call it, sign a tab, and they'd take it out of your pay, your total bill, they'd take it out of your pay at the end of the week. So I was signing the tab, everybody was signing the tab, everybody was just buying everything, and they had their girlfriends come by, and they would buy the girlfriend dinners and drinks for everybody, and so this was going wild. So, but this one guy that was playing this jazz trombone, we featured him on a whole lot of different rings. But one of the tunes he played was Honeysuckle Rose. And during that time, it was the time when Tommy Dorsey, famous Tommy Dorsey, one and only, had his band, and he was in Cleveland. And so he came by the club, and he heard about our band. He came by the club, and he stood up there and listened to this boy playing trombone. And because this boy he had a lot of guts. He didn't care about, he wasn't afraid of anybody. Didn't care how well known you were. He would try to outplay you. So when Tommy Dorsey came in there, that was just what he wanted. He said, call this Honeysuckle Rose. You want to play it? So we called and he played it. He played Honeysuckle Rose at his best. Man, he was playing so many notes and swinging. The band was sounding so good. Tommy Dorsey stayed there the rest of the night. and listen to, he come up there and he's dancing with this woman, he's standing right in front of the band, and let this boy play. Well, that was a wonderful experience because everybody enjoyed this guy's musicianship and his ability to play jazz solos. But here's what happened after that. We began to notice that some of the guys' instruments, the mutes and things like that, the accessories that we use in the brass section, mutes, all kind of mutes, they were being missed. We rehearsed about every day, and so the guy said, "Where's my mute? That such thing." And they were being misplaced. Somebody's taking them or something. And then one of the guys come and said, "My clarinet's gone. What happened to that?" So we asked the custodian, the janitor. He said, "Well, one of your boys came down here, and I let him in the music room, and he was getting the instruments and different things out of there, and he taking them out. I don't know what he did with them." So we traced it down and found out and decided it was Joe Davis, this great trombone player. He was an alcoholic. He drank an awful lot of whiskey, and he smoked pot too. And he would come down in the daytime and get something and go to a pawn shop and get him some whiskey and stuff and reefers or whatever. And he'd get high all day long. Then he'd come to work, but he still did his job. He never messed up on the music. But he would just steal our instruments and different things that we had, instruments for the band, and then pawn them. So we finally decided that we had to stop that. We was going to get rid of him. So, well, he got rid of himself. He went out one night on one of these sprees, went to an after-hours club, and they raided the place. The police in Cleveland raided that club, and he was involved in this raid, and he got smart, I guess, with one of the cops, and the guy pulled out a blackjack. One of the policemen did hit him in his mouth and put a hole in his lip, and so he couldn't play no more. We had to let him go, and we never saw him no more. Never saw him no more. What happened to him? I don't know if he ever recovered or what, but his lip was gone. It just tore up his lip, hit him in the mouth. So I never heard. After that, years and years after that, I would have different musicians who come through Columbus if they knew or heard of anybody named Joe Davison. So every now and then I'd hear something about him, but they say, well, he went back to Pennsylvania. He was from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and I never saw him anymore. And so I guess he would have been an alcoholic, the type of fellow that he was. He might have died early in life. But he was a tremendous musician. I have never heard anybody since that could play anywhere near his ability. But he would do that, so we finally got rid of him. And but we have guys in that band that went on. Two of the boys went, after our band broke up, two of the boys went with Tiny Bradshaw, who had a great band back about that time. And they went on with Lionel Hampton, played with Lionel Hampton. Hampton was coming out with the Flying Home and on Hamp's Boogie. Two of the guys played with Hamp, and he had his great band. So anyhow, like I said, all those bands that I played with, everybody, I don't care what instrument you want to pick out or point to, they were all top musicians, and they all had great careers in jazz. So anyhow, from that time on, I kind of got conservative and cooled out, and then every now and then I'd be playing at the Regal. I played up for about 7 years, right straight through. And like I said, the musicians and the entertainers would come there to work. One night, I never will forget, one night a guy came up to me, he's a white musician, saxophone player, said, "Sammy, how about letting me sit in with your band?" I said, "Okay, what's your name?" He said, "I'm Stan Getz." And everybody knew who Stan Getz was because he was probably the greatest jazz white tenor player back in the 30s and on through the 40s till he passed away. And he died rather young too, way ahead of his time. I guess he might have been in his early 50s or 60s, and he passed away from fast life. All these musicians, but they came up in there and they'd stop and play with us and blow their horns. And we had Roy Elvis. He'd come in there and different musicians like some of the guys that played with the Count Basie's band now. Danny Turner, alto sax. First alto played with Count Basie's band right today. He came up there. He was sitting in and blowing with all the guys that came up there. So we had a wonderful experience of different musicians coming in the clubs, and so I played there for, like I said, for 7 years, and during that time, a lot of great musicians coming in there and played, and we had a lot of great times together. And I also was playing golf by that time. I never forget the time that I was playing golf quite a bit, and during the summer months, young cat came in and was singing at the Regal with us. We had featured him as a romantic baritone singer, and he worked in there for about a week or two. His name was, let me see, I'm trying to think that boy's name, Prysock. His name was Arthur Prysock. And Arthur Prysock, made a lot of hit records like Blue Velvet and all that time. Now, he loved to play golf, so we got together on a golf date while he was there, so took him out to one of the golf courses, and we proceeded to start to have a little light bet. I said, man, make it light on yourself. I said, I ain't going to try to hurt you. Just want to have some fun with it. Just enjoy ourselves. He said, come on. And so he wanted to bet, I think he wanted to bet $5 a round. So he liked $5, 9 holes, and we play 18 holes, so if you lose, you lose $10, $5 on each 9 holes. So we played like that, and so I was killing him. I said, Art, I don't want to take any more of your money. So Art would probably, he might deny that if I could run across the night. He's still going, he's still singing, and haven't seen him for a long while. But he was a great singer, and had a baritone voice, something like, he sang like Bing Crosby and like Barry Coleman, one of them type of balladeers. And so, but I was winning all of his money. I mean, he came up there and played about golf with me 2 or 3 days, and I cleaned him. But I have not bragging anything, but I have won a lot of golf tournaments. I got about 25 or 30 trophies that I have won playing golf. And like I said, I've always been the type of guy, whatever you do, give it your best shot. If it's a sport, if it's a job that you're on, like if you have to do a mechanical job, or if you do a job where you have to use some kind of skill, always do your best. And that's where I was with the welding. I was doing the welding during the war. I was an arc welder, and I welded on Navy chains, anchor chains, and I welded on bomb, blockbuster bomb casings. And I remember that I started out in this war job as a bomb handler, and I worked up, and through my ambition and everything, I worked up to be a welder. I learned how to do arc welding. And the foreman would tell all the other welders, and when we had a special thing coming up, like we had to send some work that had to be tested in Aberdeen, Maryland, for the Army or for the Navy and Air Force. And so we had these bomb casings that were blockbuster bombs that were going, and our planes were flying over, and the Air Force was flying them over Germany and dropping them on Berlin, dropping them on all them cities that the Nazis had under their control. And so I welded a lot of the bombs, and he told these other welders that I don't want anybody to weld on these bombs but Hopkins and Bryan. A guy worked with me, his name was Johnny Bryan. He was an excellent welder too. Just the two of us, and they'd shove these bombs into us two, and we would weld, and then they'd pull them out, and the rest of the guys would not do anything. We just took over. Because we just had two places to weld, and then the bombs would come through for us. Nobody else. They'd just take a brief recess or a rest stop. And I would weld, and Johnny Bryan, but he would weld. And so we did maybe about 20 or 30 bombs each. And they would ship them to Aberdeen, Maryland to be tested. And the same way with the Navy chain. We welded the studs in the links of these Navy chains. And of course, these chains were real heavy, real big links. And so we did that. Our welding was so good that not to be bragging or anything, but you know, if the government wants to inspect your work, because it had to be precision work, because it had to be used in a war effort to bomb in Germany, so it had to be good. It had to be of the very best quality. And I was one of the two welders in Columbus at this bomb site. We were the only place in Columbus that was doing that type of work, Navy chains and blockbuster bombs. So that was quite an accomplishment. I felt kind of good about that. So a lot of times I would have things like that to do and accomplish and show off my abilities, and I was a good welder. And I just, don't intend to be blowing off or bragging about my abilities, but just to show you that, tell these young guys that's coming up, whatever you do, don't slack up, man. Give it your best shot. And I had jobs offered to me that I turned down because I was mostly a musician. Like I was before I got the job in that defense plant, I was working another defense job where we were buffing different metal pieces like would be for automobile parts, like hubcaps, ornaments on the front armament on the hood of the car, Cadillac and all Plymouth and Chrysler and all them different things that would be part of the assembly part of a car, and it would be chrome pieces. And I was doing that so well that they told me that the foreman he had a certain way that you would the procedure that you would you had certain steps in the procedure of buffing these metal parts. And you start, like the first step you do, you pick them up, this, that, and the other, and go on till you finally got the finished product. And I did that so well that they made me special. They offered me a job as a foreman. They wanted to make me a foreman on the night shift. But I told them I turned it down because I was a musician. I didn't want to lose my opportunities to play at night with my band. So I turned that job down, so I quit. The war was over, so I didn't have to be worried about the draft board trying to put me back and take me off the job, put me in the service. Because we had won the war. That was after the Hitler had been given up and surrendered, and the Japanese had surrendered. So we went back to a normal life, but we were still in the defense type of work, and we were making pretty good wages. Wages were up in all over the United States during that wartime. But then after I got out of that, I still kept my band going, and I had a lot of jobs where I would play all over the state. And one of the places I would go, I played a lot of country club jobs. I would go to Tiffin, Ohio, and Marion, Ohio, and Antioch College, Cleveland, Toledo. Played all them kind of college jobs, and I remember one time I played a job where I played for a very wealthy man who had a daughter who got married, and he hired my band to play for her wedding reception. And he gave us a $500 tip. We were playing, I paid all my men way above scale, and then he gave us a $500 tip, just at the end of the job. So everybody got made it above scale. I paid the guys at scale or above scale, and we made some good money. And we did that every time we had a job. We would always get tips, and because I always had the very best musicians that I could possibly find in Columbus, and they worked for me, and I had a very, very good experience to have such good musicians and get along and be dependable and good jobs. So that's what I say about whatever you do. It's not you think you can outdo or make somebody else feel bad because of your abilities. Now, you don't do that. What you need to do is to be a gentleman. Do your thing, whatever your thing is. Do it to the best of your ability, and try to remember that the other guy is trying his best too. So give him a chance, and don't try to hog up all the limelight yourself, but share with him, and share with everybody. So that's what I've always felt like that was the best way to get along. And then everybody's your friend. Sometimes you're going to meet people that will sort of disagree with you, or maybe cause you to be unhappy. But then what you have to do is show them that you're an intelligent person, and that you can overlook whatever discrepancies he tried to put in your way and try to make you unhappy. But go on with your thing and you find happiness in your accomplishments that you have done, and you find out that them kind of people will soon fade away. They won't be causing you any trouble because They will run into some kind of a snag, and they will be stopped right in their own tracks. And so you don't have to worry about trying to get back at somebody, trying to get even with anybody. Forget about that type of thing. That's all petty stuff. So I've always been that type of guy, and so I've tried to be a good person, and I've learned how to work different various types of jobs. I got into the insurance business. I got into the real estate business, and like I said, I've had a good life, and my wife is wonderful. I had a wonderful life with her. We married over 53 years before she passed away, and my children have been wonderful to me, and they have just done everything they could possibly do for me. And I remember that my oldest son, he's got two fine sons, and they're accomplishing their lives. They're doing real well.